Snowflakes drifted softly onto glowing streets filled with red, green, and gold lights. Holiday music spilled from nearby shops as families gathered around a towering Christmas tree in the square. Laughter and warmth filled the air, except outside a tall, cold glass building nearby. There, Clara Evans stood with her 5-year-old daughter, Nancy. Clara's worn coat spoke of many hard winters, her face pale but gentle. Nancy, cheeks pink from the cold, clutched a tired teddy bear and stared through the glass doors. Inside, workers were dismantling a massive Christmas tree, packing away ornaments under strict orders. The CEO hated Christmas. He had once called it glitter over lies. Just then, Daniel Harper stepped outside. Tall, sharp, and composed, he looked like a man who hadn't rested in years. Nancy tugged her mother's hand, then suddenly stepped forward, blocking his path. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly. "Can I borrow that Christmas tree? Just for my mom. Just for one night." Daniel froze. Clara rushed forward, embarrassed, apologizing, but Nancy stood firm. "My mom is sick," she continued. "She sat a lot. She said if we had a Christmas tree, maybe this year could still have a little magic." Daniel studied the child's face. There was no desperation in her eyes, only belief. He glanced at Clara, who stood quietly, worn down by life, asking for nothing. After a long silence, Daniel turned back toward the tree. "She can take it," he said. Nancy's face lit up. Daniel instructed his assistant to deliver the tree, then walked away without another word. As his car pulled off, he caught sight of Nancy waving and felt something unfamiliar loosen in his chest. That evening, a small delivery truck stopped outside a modest apartment. The tree was carried upstairs, its pine scent filling the hall. Nancy laughed with joy as Clara knelt beside it, breath shallow but steady. Together, they decorated it with paper snowflakes, yarn garlands, and a worn foil star. "It's perfect," Clara whispered, brushing her daughter's cheek. Across the city, Daniel stood alone in his dark penthouse. He opened a small box of old Christmas keepsakes and found a photo of his late wife, smiling mid-laughter. Her voice echoed in his memory. "You don't have to believe in Christmas. Just believe in us." 2 rooms, 2 lives, one glowing with handmade stars, the other quiet and cold, both changed by a single borrowed tree. Daniel stared at the empty space where the tree once stood, his glass untouched. Across the city, Clara coughed softly, pressing a hand to her chest. 2 worlds, both silent, both longing for warmth. The next morning, Clara sat at her small kitchen table, tea trembling in her hands. Slowly, she wrote a note on cream-colored paper, thanking the man who had given her daughter more. Then a tree, who had reminded her that kindness still existed. Nancy added a crayon drawing, 3 figures beneath a green tree topped with a silver star. Later, they left the envelope at a front desk with a simple request to give it to the boss. That evening, Daniel read the letter alone in his office. He studied the drawing for a long time, tracing the tall figure meant to be him. Something shifted, quiet, uncertain, but real. A file arrived the next morning. Clara Evans, former employee, released due to medical issues. Daniel stared at the words longer than he should have. That afternoon, he stood outside a narrow brick building and saw his tree glowing in a 3rd-floor window. After a brief hesitation, he knocked. The apartment was small but warm, filled with the scent of gingerbread and soft light. There was no asking, no expectation, just tea, a child's laughter, and simple conversation. When Daniel left, snow was falling again. The light in that window felt more real than anything he knew. That night, Daniel opened a wooden box he hadn't touched in years. Inside lay fragments of another life and a delicate glass star, etched with words from his late wife. The next morning, that star arrived at Clara's door with a short note. "Every tree deserves a real star." Nancy's joy filled the room. Clara knew instantly who had sent it. Days later, a quiet phone call passed between them. No promises, no burdens, only gratitude and understanding. That night, Nancy tied a small wish to the tree, that her mother would smile and the tree man would come back. On Christmas Eve, the apartment glowed softly. Soup simmered, bread toasted, and the glass star was placed carefully at the top of the tree. It wasn't much, but it was enough. And beneath borrowed light and shared kindness, the loneliness felt just a little lighter. She closed her journal, swallowed one more pill, and went to wash the dishes. A plate slipped from her hands and shattered. Pain surged through her chest. Clara gripped the counter, knees buckling, breath fading. She slid to the floor, unable to call out. Minutes later, Nancy woke to the wrong kind of silence. She found her mother on the kitchen floor and shook her gently, crying for her to wake up. When there was no response, she ran to the neighbors' doors. No one answered. It was Christmas Eve. Her eyes landed on the tree and the star. Remembering the man in the black coat, she grabbed the phone and dialed the last number saved. "Please," she whispered through tears. "My mommy won't wake up." Daniel didn't hesitate. He grabbed his coat, called emergency services, and raced through the snow. Fear tightened his chest as sirens cut through the night. At the apartment, he knelt beside Clara while paramedics lifted her onto the stretcher. Nancy clung to his hand. "Don't let her go," she begged. "I won't," he whispered. At the hospital, Daniel stayed. Nancy slept against his shoulder while Christmas lights blinked faintly in the corridor. He watched the doors and prayed in a way he hadn't in years. By morning, Daniel uncovered the truth. Medical reports, a plea to keep working, a cold dismissal marked policy. Anger hardened into resolve. That evening, he ordered immediate changes, medical relief for vulnerable workers, and a full review of past terminations. "Kindness without condition," he said, "is not a weakness." When Clara finally woke, Daniel sat quietly at her bedside. "I'm sorry," he said. "I pretended people like you didn't exist." She looked at him gently. "I just wanted my daughter to believe the world was good." Nancy burst in, wrapping her mother in a tight hug. Daniel stepped back, holding the drawing she'd made, 3 figures beneath a Christmas tree. This time, he understood. He hadn't just given away a tree. He had found his way back to himself. A narrow window overlooked a frost-covered garden where sunlight melted the snow in gentle patches. It was peaceful, far from the noisy streets Clara once heard at night. She never asked Daniel how he arranged the place. When she tried, he only said, "It's my responsibility." He visited often, sometimes bringing books, fruit, or tea, and sometimes nothing at all. On those days, he simply sat beside her bed, reading quietly while Nancy colored nearby. Nancy had already claimed him as family. "Look what I drew, Mr. Dan," she would say, holding up another picture of 3 people beneath the Christmas tree. Daniel would smile. "Is that us again?" "Of course," Nancy replied. Clara noticed everything. The way Daniel always knelt to Nancy's level, always listened, never rushed. She felt her guard slowly soften. She hated needing help, yet she couldn't deny the comfort he brought. January passed gently with card games, puzzles, and long, quiet afternoons. Daniel never crossed lines. He was simply there. Then the doctor shared good news. Clara could go home in a week, but she needed a calm place to recover. That evening, Daniel handed her an envelope. Inside was the address of a small house in the suburbs. "It's mine," he said. "Quiet. 1 floor. You can stay as long as you need." Clara hesitated, stunned, but when Nancy's eyes filled with hope, she nodded. "Okay, we'll borrow it." They didn't name what was forming between them, but something gentle had begun. February arrived with soft snow and still mornings. The small house felt safe, wrapped in trees and silence. Clara grew stronger each day. Daniel visited often, never too much. Nancy waited for his knock every morning and ran to meet him when his car arrived. Clara even began working part-time from home, proud to earn her days again. One cold morning in early March, Daniel arrived with his SUV open. Nancy saw it first. "Mom, the tree." The old Christmas tree stood carefully secured in the back. "I thought," Daniel said quietly, "the thing that started all this should stay with us." Nancy hugged the tree. Clara laughed, bright and unrestrained, for the first time in months. Daniel watched her, something warm settling in his chest. Then he held out a small box. Inside were house keys. "No pressure," he said softly. "No expectations. If you ever wonder where you belong, just stay." Clara looked at Nancy dancing near the tree, then at Daniel. "Nancy once told me her wish," she said. She wished someone would love her mommy the way her daddy used to. Daniel didn't speak. He simply took Clara's hand. She didn't pull away. That evening, they stood together as snow fell softly. Nancy placed the glass star on the tree once more. A little girl, her mother, and a man who once doubted miracles stood in silence, warm, steady, and no longer alone.